I'm here in front of the Blackmagic booth to check out a couple of their new products like the ATEM Mini Extreme and the new Hyperdecks. I'm going to chat with Dan from Blackmagic here and get some questions answered. So I am really curious on the new ATEM Mini. It looks like a lot of solid features added to it. Looks like a lot of feedback was listened to in terms of how people are using the ATEM Minis today. Who do you see as like the ideal user for it, like the ideal use case?
Yeah, so with the new ATEM Mini Extreme MISO G2, the thing that we kind of have seen with people that are using the ATEM Minis is that there's a big jump to go from like an ATEM Mini to like an ATEM television studio, which is our big all-in-one, very professional,
Huge panel.
big guy, hefty guy there, which is awesome. It's an awesome product that does all of these things, and it does a lot more than the ATEM Minis do. And the question is, how do we do something that's kind of in that ATEM Mini form factor that's done really well for us? People use them, they're super portable. And then how do we kind of give them more of that functionality of the ATEM television studios? And that's really where this kind of bore from, which is why when you look at the layout of the new ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, it actually looks a lot like the layouts of the ATEM television studios. It's that change from that ATEM Mini style to that ATEM television studio style, even though it's in the ATEM Mini form factor.
So does that mean you're trying to expand to like more professional users in the smaller form factor?
I think that's a big thing that we're looking at here is people who are saying, look, I want to have some of these other professional functionality or form factors. We were able to add more audio on here. That's the thing that the ATEM Minis have had some challenges with, being able to add the XLRs, being able to have the MADI input on there. One of the other big updates we did on here was adding that USB, so that our Thunderbolt, I should say. Adding Thunderbolt on there. That gives more functionality, doing some of that replay on there.
So with the Thunderbolt interface, my understanding is it is kind of like having the Ultra Studio built in.
That's right.
Where it's like you get the Thunderbolt deck link interface key fill from the computer.
That's right. So you can do all that key fill, you can do like all the replay functionality. So just having that one thing adds a lot of functionality that wouldn't normally be on that ATEM Mini. And that's not something that every ATEM Mini user is going to need. But if you are doing things like stingers and doing those graphics, or you want to do that replay.
Well, I mean, even for like smaller streams and things, it's a really useful feature to be able to bring in web graphics through OBS, through a deck link.
That's right.
And right now it takes either the $1,000 Ultra Studio.
Yeah, that's right.
Or you get just the one signal with a tiny little box.
That's right.
But like now that's in the ATEM Mini?
That's right. So it's just adding more of that functionality, and again, not having to jump all the way into that ATEM television studio. Price point there.
That's super great. So that already, between the XLR and the
Thunderbolt
interface, I'm already seeing like devices disappearing from the desk as I'm putting this kit together.
Exactly.
Right?
So there's always a challenge with Blackmagic where it's like, look, the first thing we want to start with is like, how do you make a $300 switcher? Because I want to just empower people to be able to do a physical switcher as opposed to a software switcher or something else. And then it's like how do I continue to move people upstream to do more and more without having to be like, cool, you got a $300 switcher and my next switcher is a $3,000 switcher. Like that's a big jump for someone that's going from like maybe not monetizing or just doing it for fun. And that's why we have 78 ATEM Minis, not really, but it feels like a lot of ATEM Minis, because we're trying to give people the tools they need without having to say fork over all the money, because that's what you have to do to get to the next stop, ATEM Constellation. Like, whoa, that's a big jump for someone that's not needing SDI or doesn't need Ultra HD. So that's why just tweaking this. The ATEM Mini Extreme ISO is kind of like our highest end ATEM Mini. So this just is giving it more of a bump up there to fill in that gap to the next level.
So one of the questions that comes up with every ATEM launch is, why isn't there an ATEM that has a mix of HDMI and SDI like the original television studio did? Because that was such a useful feature.
It was, and it's a debate that we've had internally a lot. And essentially it just becomes look, we have the converters to be able to do that if we need to. And it is also one of those things where it is obviously hard to make everybody happy.
It is.
How many do we need? 1, 4? And that's what we found when we were doing those original ones. So there were people that liked it, but it was always that but if you could just make 2 be the other, and you're like, can I only have 1? And you're like, well, I'm just not going to be able to.
You can't make everybody happy.
I can't make everybody happy. I sell a $59 converter. You're like, that's just going to have to be the answer there. So that's the reason we're there.
Yeah, because I can see it going both ways. Of like for smaller like meeting rooms and homes, HDMI is obviously
great,
more common. Like more people have more HDMI devices. But as soon as you go into like a larger conference hall or something a little bit bigger, you're going to do SDIs for
bigger
your camera
venues
runs and for your projectors. So what mix is the right mix? I don't know.
That's right. That's the hard part to kind of answer there. So,
but there is the new converter, bidirectional rack form factor now.
Yeah,
right?
so we have a couple different converters that we've added in there that do the bidirectional bits. Of course, we have all of our 2110 products that are out there now. So people who are running really long distances and just want to drop a network cable down out there, we have that coming down the pipe for different form factors in there. So there's lots of ways of kind of working around those solutions. And that also becomes a problem is like the more we put into the ATEM, the more expensive the ATEM becomes. So that's cool if we want to just make the $15,000 ATEM. But again, how many people have you alienated by not making the more affordable ones as well? And that's the game we're always trying to figure out how to balance.
So with there was the new converter that has, it looked like HDMI and SDI and 2110.
That's right.
All in one.
Yep. So we have two models of that. We have one model that is simply just that kind of the SDI to HDMI. And the idea there is really have that high quality conversion from SDI to HDMI with the 2110 in there, being able to go to these big monitors you want to use for like color grading or the like in there. But then also we have the larger one that has the 10 channel, be able to do surround sound with all those. Because if we're going to a lot of these grading rooms now want to do like surround sound in there as well. So this is something that's going to be able to give us even more audio capabilities than our typical converters would have.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm just excited to have an HDMI SDI converter in a rack form factor.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Honestly, huge pain.
We had for a long time, we had those old open gear converters and they like kind of work, but it's like, well, it's a box that holds 10, which was cool if you had 10.
Cool if you
need one, you're like, nah, the rack mount is pretty nice. So
in my rack, I have this pile of them in the back, and it's like a giant mess.
Kind of sits there. Yeah, and we all do what we need to do to make it get by. But these are great products that we're happy to be getting out here.
That's great. So the shuttle, Hyperdeck Shuttle, that's the other one that looks super, super cool.
Yep.
It looks like it's kind of like the video assist screen and features plus the shuttle.
Plus the Hyperdeck. So like this is the kind of great thing is like the original Shuttle was neat, but when you used it, you kind of found yourself going like, man, if only I could get a little more like information feedback there. And like just having the screen alone fixes a lot of that because now I can see what's happening. I can queue up, how am I queuing up a clip if I'm going to use it as a stinger? How am I going to go ahead and do this if I'm doing the key and fill? Now having all of that there, having all of that controls there is great. Being able to have the actual storage in the back or using the flash memory on the bottom, like it's one of those things that's like, if you were to say, how are people going to use it? You go, I don't know. There's like so many ways that you could use it.
Yeah, so it looks like I see it on the booth there with the replay setup. So it's clearly like part of the replay workflow. I assume it can't play back while it's recording still, like so Hyperdeck. It's a playback device.
I mean, it is a Hyperdeck, so it does all the things that a Hyperdeck would do. So if I just have a bunch of clips on there and I want it to show up and play back those clips being queued up from the ATEM, it can do that as well.
But for the replay workflow, the idea is that you would have something else being recording the program.
That's right. You still want to be recording ISO files somewhere else and then be pulling off of via Resolve to do all the replay stuff.
Can it, since there's growing file support now with the Hyperdecks, could it be pulling from a growing file?
I'm not 100% sure.
Seems like
on
that's
that one.
That's a good next step.
I think that I thought Hyperdecks could do that, but I'm not sure if it's in here at this minute.
Because then you could actually, if you had two of them, you could do a pretty good replay workflow of use one for the playback navigation while the other one's just recording.
The big thing with the playback of the growing files is that's usually still being seen by Resolve and not the Hyperdecks, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. Yeah.
So what's the intended replay workflow with the new Hyperdeck?
I think it's not really for replay like our Resolve replay. I think it's more like using a stinger and it's just doing like, here's the stinger for the replay and you're queuing up those stingers, you're queuing up a clip in that kind of function, like a typical Hyperdeck. But now you're able to see it, it's just on the table, it works there. So
very cool, very cool. Yeah, it looks like the side-by-side, the new ATEM meeting the new Hyperdeck look like a really good pair.
Yeah, and I love the ATEM camera control too because we had the big 4 thing and you're like, that's cool if you're like doing a live event where you need multiple cameras but just having the one where you can go between the 8 cameras, like super helpful. Now I only have one thing I have to take around. I can get everything queued up, make changes as I need to. Like one of those things that like, well, we talked about this like 8 years ago and then like there was a pandemic and a zillion other problems. And you're like, oh, that thing's finally here. So like that's a really cool product as well.
Speaking of things that are finally here, the last year, I remember the 2110 was a presentation box. How's that doing? It's good. Is that actually out? Is that
Yeah,
coming
that's
out?
actually out.
Okay.
That's actually shipping. We actually, funny enough, like we used it in the hotel. We have like a big staff presentation.
Okay.
We're like, hey, bring one of those because like I don't know what that projector has. And
Yeah.
you're like, yep, cool, exactly what we want it to do. Just bring it out, plug it in. It does the conversions. We're going between a laptop and some other thing, and it's like cool.
Great.
All does all the bits, and it's and I think that's the selling point. Is it's like you don't have to be a rocket surgeon to bring the thing out and make it all work. It just kind of does what you want it to do, and off you go. So yeah, it did take a long time to get out. It's only been shipping for a couple of months now, so
Okay.
it did take quite a bit of extra work to get it done. But it is done. It is out. It is shipping, and it's doing well.
Fantastic. Okay, really specific question on the converter.
Yes.
The new HDMI SDI 2110 converter.
Yeah.
It can cross convert across all of them, right? So like you can have SDI in and send it out the HDMI.
Yeah, I believe so.
And 2110.
Yes, I believe so. Yep.
Grant, dropped a brief mention of being able to lock it into conversion modes because it also has the auto failover that the bidirectional.
I believe so. Yes.
So like if you unplug an HDMI cord that was being used to do SDI out, it would fail over to the SDI as an SDI pass through then,
I think,
which is how the simple bidirectional cross converter works.
Right.
Which is a problem because if you are in certain scenarios, you can end up creating feedback loops or just weird
That's right.
glitches. Does this have the locking feature?
I don't know that it does. That's
Okay.
one of those like because it's just been kind of like in development and not out yet.
Okay.
I haven't seen it work, so you're just kind of looking at it going like, look, it does all of these things.
Okay.
But we haven't actually seen.
I really hope it does because that was like one of the because I have the ATEM Constellation in my studio, so but I obviously have a ton of HDMI devices, so I have a ton of converters. And it was a huge pain point of like I would turn off a device and then suddenly a signal will be routed somewhere totally
like,
different.
where's that going?
Modes.
Yeah.
And cool. Yeah. Okay. Anything else for
live
to
production
call out here
stuff
on live? Yeah.
We covered the Hyperdeck. Covered that.
Oh, I guess the whole new cloud switcher thing.
Yeah. So that's not available yet.
Okay.
But it, like you can see where we're trying to go right now, right? Where we're saying like, look, we have all this cloud service stuff that we're building.
Yeah.
Being able to shoot files up from the camera directly so that an editor can start working on them immediately in Resolve. And obviously the next step of that is, well, if I actually just have something being encoded and sent to the cloud, why can I not just switch it in the cloud without using any hardware?
Sure.
So essentially using like that ATEM software to be able to say, look, I've got these 3-4 cameras. Let me just do all this switch. And now I've taken my laptop, I've gotten some HDMI output, I got a multi-view, I got a program output, and I could just be doing a remote switch for a few cameras. So we're showing that. It's not a thing that's available. It's not a thing where we've monetized at this point or anything. But
so there's no actual planned ship date yet?
There is nothing planned right now as far as like that's going to be in June, but it's definitely the like this is what we're working on for these reasons because we're already talking about doing more streaming via the cloud. We're already talking about obviously storage in the cloud, doing more Resolve workflows in the cloud.
And I imagine like the iPhone app
the camera yeah,
would
exactly.
be an ingestion.
Yeah, exactly. That already does that for Resolve.
Yeah,
and this is basically saying like if we're doing it for Resolve, we can also be doing this for an ATEM. And I think what he was showing was a very simple 4 input. Like obviously we're working with like, hey, how do you just make this start working? But like you want to squint your eyes and look out in the future and go like, cool, I've got cameras all over the world shooting directly into the cloud, and I'm sitting on my couch with basically just software and a monitor, and I'm able to do this live switch and be sending it out to also anywhere in the world without having a control room. Like, and that's the whole thing is like, there's nothing wrong with having everything on set. There's low latency. You're all right there. There's also nothing wrong with like doing the switch not where the cameras are. People do that all the time as well. This is just saying we're doing that without the actual physical switch because all the video transmission is just going without any hardware. Pretty neat. Pretty neat to think about.
That's super cool. That'll be fun to see where that goes for sure.
For sure. And we want to be there. Like we have all the tools to do it. So like, let's just start working on it, show people what we're working on.
Okay, very cool. So keep an eye out for that.
Yep.
Maybe see some more concrete version of it next year at NAB.
I mean, I imagine we'll start putting betas out this year, like between now and NAB, but I don't think it's going to be one of those like, yep, and here's the full roadmap, and this is how it's all going to go. I think it's going to be like, cool, guys start playing with it, see how it works, get feedback, see how that thing goes. Because it's obviously, the nice part about it is unlike a hardware, you have to be like, look, this is done and cooked. You've paid money, I have to give it to you. This is something we could be like, cool, we've got a 4 camera version, let people start playing with it.
Yeah, a lot easier to ship updates.
It's much easier to update and get feedback and do all that versus a like, hey man, you bought that product, it's yours.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes as the year develops, but I think that's probably how we see things go.
Cool.